Good afternoon, and welcome to the April 23rd meeting of the Pinehurst Village Council. We're happy that you're here. The first thing on our agenda is the invocation by my friend Pastor John Kenyon of Redeemer Church. And following the pastor's invocation, if we will stand, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I always screw this part up. Am I supposed to do the pledge, or does somebody else do the pledge?
I think we just all turn around with the flag.
I think we all know it, right?
I think we all know it.
Okay, good. Well, an invocation, as you all know, is not typically an opening prayer. An invocation is we're asking the Lord of heaven and earth to be with us amongst our discussions and decision-making, so let's do that now. Father in heaven, we give you thanks for this opportunity we have to discuss important things, to serve you, to serve this community. We invite you to be part of it. We invite you to be involved in the decision-making, the guidance, and all the logistics involved here. We thank you for the men and women up front here who have given of their time and talent and treasures to serve this community, to make it better, to grow it, to make it healthy and safe, and a real blessing really throughout the world, but even more particularly to those of us who live here. We give you thanks for that. We pray for a spirit of congeality, for support for one another, for the diversity of decisions and personalities that make the final product so much better than any one of us alone could do. So I thank you for their service. Pray your blessings upon them in this meeting, and we ask this in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Kenyon. The pastor is a recovering attorney. Repenting, as is another member of the audience, Mr. Spoonhour. So I love to see recovering attorneys admit that they're recovering. Okay, next on our agenda, we have reports first by our manager.
Okay, I'd just like to cover a couple of things. The first is a little bit of an update on the FY20 and budget and the 5-year strategic operating plan that I briefed the council on at the last work session. In the aftermath of that discussion, I asked our finance folks to take the firefighter that was in the plan to be hired in 2022 and move it back up to 2020, which was originally requested. And it turned out that there was ample operating margin in both FY20 and 2021 to make that happen and still keep our finances in the right place. So that will be reflected in the budget that I bring forward to you here in a couple of weeks. The second thing I'd like to comment on is that, and I know the council already knows this, but for the public's information, we have hired a new planning director, a gentleman by the name of Darren Burek. He's coming to us from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, pretty sizable town. Been their planning and inspections director up there for, wow, it's a bunch of years, maybe 10 or 15 years in that capacity. So he's coming with a whole host of experience and knowledge, a little bit of a different operating environment up there. But we're really happy to have him join the team. First day on the job, I think, should be the 3rd of June, and he will also be living in the village of Pinehurst. He's already made an offer on a house, so that's good news as well. He will be in amongst us.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. Kevin?
I don't have anything, but I'm hoping that Jeff Batten will give us an update. Is he here today? No. On the Triangle J recycling meeting that happened, the larger one, not our local one, the larger one in Raleigh. So I'd like to try to get him to give us an update on that.
I'm sure we can get that.
Did you attend that, Judy? No. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Mr. Baldry?
Nothing tonight, ma'am.
Okay. Judy?
At Mr. Baldry's suggestion, Kevin and I met with Marty McKenzie, Fred Wood, Caroline Miller, and Nicole Dunstan last Friday to talk about some projects in the village, and we're we're starting on embarking on those, and we'll weave in other property owners as well, and probably won't have much to talk about for a couple of weeks because one of the reps for one of the building owners is out of town till early May. So, but we'll be back to you in May and talking about some things that might tie out with improving the walkability of the village.
Jack?
Last week, I attended the Moore County Transportation Committee meeting, and the major item on the meeting was the prioritization of the projects for the next round. If you're familiar with the way North Carolina Department of Transportation does their projects, they go through a rather extensive and lengthy process of nomination and prioritization and funding and so forth and so on. The interesting thing is the way we are involved with them is that every county has the ability to submit up to 8 projects in each category. Each categories being railroad or aircraft, which we have very little of, except for the Moore County Airport, of course. Pedestrian, being bicycle or pedestrian projects, or obviously the highway project. So you can submit in each one of those categories. And each county is supposedly guaranteed 5 project submittals per mode, and then the committee from a regional basis selects which projects to prioritize. So it was a rather interesting project. Basically, there's probably not a lot of new news, but some of the projects will be the 15501 widening in Southern Pines, of course, and some super street improvements in Route 1 north of Midland Road, or excuse me, north of Midland Road, 211 widening from essentially Holly Grove School Road, which is really Seven Lakes pretty much, out to down into West End. Then there's another access management on Midland Road by Airport Road. We saw a project that had previously been brought forward, which is a improvement at where Airport Road meets Midland Road, a circle there. And for the most part, people were rather negative on that being too close to the traffic circle, just one more complex intersection at that time. So those projects were prioritized, and they go to the regional basis now for assessment again. So it's a long process, but in the end, we end up with the prioritization of the projects, and the money is spent according to how the counties would like it spent, and the villages have an input, of course, also.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Next item on our agenda is our consent agenda, and all of these items can be enacted under one motion.
I move to approve all items listed and considered routine in the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Kevin Drum and a second by John Baldry. Is there any discussion? If not, let's vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. That's unanimous, Beth. Next is item 5, and that's appointing a planning board member. Jeff?
Sure. Maybe I can get Sonia Rothstein and Leo to come on up. We have another vacancy coming open on the Planning and Zoning and Board of Adjustments organizations in June, and we did interviews a couple of months ago when we filled the last position, and as it turned out, we only had one additional application that came in since then that didn't look as promising as Sonia's did, and so we went with that, the results of that previous interview. And so Leo and I would like to make the recommendation that you appoint Sonia to both of those boards.
Wonderful. You know you're sitting next to the Volunteer of the Year. He was just crowned.
Yeah.
He was crowned so you've got some big steps to watch, and a lot to learn from Leo. He's a great leader. He is a wonderful leader. He's helped us a lot. Does anyone have any comments?
Thank you very much for stepping forward. Part of your application says that you were recognized by Governor Cooper honoring you with the Longleaf Pine Award. So you come very distinguished. So you have two people sitting in the audience who are very distinguished too. One of my tennis partners is Manny, who's back there. So I know you get good support from Manny. So I'm very, very, very pleased to see that Leo's bringing you forward, and so is Jeff, and being part of this important position. Sonia, thank you.
Agree. Thank you very much for stepping forward and being willing to serve on the planning board.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All righty. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 1911, appointing Sonia Rothstein to the Board of Adjustment and the Planning and Zoning Board.
Second?
We have a motion by Judy Davis, and I'll take a second by Jack Farrell. Is there any discussion? If not, let's vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Thank you very much, Sonia. That's unanimous. Beth, that's unanimous, and we look forward to seeing you working hard.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Leo.
We'll put her right to work,
Okay, get her right on a committee or
starting
something.
July 1st.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, the next item is other business. Do any council members have other business that they'd like to talk about?
I'd just
Okay.
like to amend my comment earlier. I said we met with Fred Wood, who's not been with us for a while. We met with Bill Wood.
Bill Wood. Oh,
The
I
Fred
didn't.
Wood building.
Yeah,
I did
that's
not
true.
even
Bill Wood was there
notice.
as
Yeah,
well.
Bill Wood. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, next then we have comments from attendees. Are there any folks in the audience who would like to make a comment at this time? Oh, yes, Mr. Spoonhour.
I just have two questions. One is if there's been any action taken on our request to rescind the fence permit issued to Randy Acres because it's under construction now, and we need to see where that is. Two is whether there's been any action moving forward to require notice and posting on future permit applications that impact alleyways.
Jeff?
We have not rescinded the permit for the fence, and we are still discussing a potential way forward on amendments to our PDO that would allow for noticing in these types of situations in the future.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other comments from attendees? Yes, sir.
My name is Don Hunter. I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Country Club in North Carolina, representing the neighborhood, and we'd like you to take a hard look at the Blake Village request from Aberdeen. We're not in favor of that density and the traffic and the noise that would cause and changes in our environment. And we'd also like to ask that you continue to take a hard look at the school planning process with changing schools, which would affect CCNC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other attendees wishing to speak? Yes. Jane?
Hogaman, 18 Lockton Court in Pinehurst. Having attended the two public hearings on rezoning applications, the Moore County Planning Board's April 4 meeting and the Aberdeen Planning Board's April 18th public hearing, I would like to say a word for zoning stability. In southern Moore County, we can no longer afford to wait for individual development applications to roll in haphazardly and hope for the best. Maybe that worked years ago when times were slower and land seemed limitless, but this area is now developed to such an extent and is so inundated with new development pressure that municipal and county planners have got to get out ahead of the game. The county and its municipalities need to have a viable, overarching plan for how they want new development to take shape along our major highway corridors, in our downtowns and village centers, in our residential neighborhoods, and in our rural areas. And they need to adhere to that plan as the framework by which future development should be guided. Not every intersection is appropriate for every development proposal that comes along. We can no longer look at a proposed rezoning project in a vacuum. We must consider the pond into which the stone would be thrown and think about the splash effect. In today's southern Moore County, just about any new rezoning proposal is going to directly impact established development. We need to consider the practical impacts that new commercial development might impose upon nearby residential communities with respect to heavy traffic, noise, trash, odors, bright lights, late hours, delivery trucks, nuisance, loss of privacy, loss of property values, and loss of a quiet residential lifestyle. If you had attended the Moore County and Aberdeen hearings, you would have heard local residents beg for their homes to be spared from the impact of these rezonings. Our traffic situation in southern Moore County is now so congested that we cannot entertain rezoning or major subdivision applications without an engineered traffic study provided at the technical review stage. The same holds true for wetlands delineation and stormwater runoff detention plans. Because here's the thing, zoning stability is crucial to quality of life and property values. People are not going to invest their all on shifting sands. If southern Moore County gets a reputation for pulling the rug out from under folks who have already bought homes and started businesses here, if the fabric of established communities is repeatedly torn to make way for unplanned developments, we will all be the losers. If the county or a municipality does decide to turn the ship from residential to commercial, for example, in a given area, it needs to do the homework ahead of time to figure out what types of commercial uses, what scale of buildings, in which locations, with what kinds of buffers and safety factors are going to harmonize with, rather than disrupt, existing neighborhoods, anticipated traffic patterns, and environmental factors. In other words, there would need to be a proactive plan for transitioning through the change, thought out ahead of time from the perspective of overview. This February, the county convened a planning group with representatives from the southern Moore County municipalities, NCDOT, and TARPO to work on a coordinated plan for the development of these corridors. Let's put together a substantive plan for density control, traffic control, scale of buildings, setbacks, true landscape screening, and lighting control with buffer zones between commercial development and existing residential development. Existing development on 15501 from the traffic circle south to Route 1 in Aberdeen is a good illustration of the great differences that can arise between different types of developments. First, from the traffic circle to below Belk, 15501 is a parkway. What the driver sees is landscaping. That doesn't mean there's nothing there. Pinehurst Club number 7, the high school, the Comfort Inn, a Marriott, all are located along this stretch of 15501, but are set so far back from the road as not to be visible. The Belk Plaza at Morganton Road is set back, above the road and extensively landscaped. The parking lots are screened from view. Below Belk is the Fresh Market Grocery Store, a popular venue. It's set in a plaza with a gas station and rows of shops. It's always a busy spot, and yet it's not visible from 15501. But contrast that with 15501 from the car dealership south to Route 1. It's night and day. South of Brucewood, the big box stores are all exposed to the roadway, the acres of parking lots, the signage, and the bright lights at night. You can see immediately that narrow planting strips along the highway shoulders have no practical effect to hide the parking lots and the big buildings. There will always be speculators, developers, and entrepreneurs with personal visions, but the county's planning board and board of commissioners and this village's council and planning and zoning board are imbued with the responsibility of stewardship. They must ensure that we are steered down a path that protects those who have already invested, including the most vulnerable in our communities. They must figure out where we want to be going and then evaluate applications as to whether they fit the bill, not the other way around. You know, if someone applies for a zoning variance, the hair on everyone's neck stands up. Variances are sparingly granted because they allow someone to avoid the very rules that apply to everybody else. A justification has to be found that is outside of the applicant's control, wetlands or steep slopes or rocky outcrops, for instance, that prevent a lot owner from making reasonable use of his land without relief from the strict letter of the zoning ordinance. A finding must also be made that the variance is not so large that it would contravene the integrity of the ordinance or adversely impact neighboring properties. And only then only the minimum relief is granted. I believe that this is how rezoning should be approached, especially now that southern Moore County is getting so crowded. After all, rezoning is a matter of a developer asking to be excused from the rules laid down in the comprehensive plan so we can have an individual exception from the plan framework that everyone else is counting on. Rezonings are effectively use variances, and they affect all the properties around them. And P.S., we should rethink Ordinance 1313 with regard to allocations of additional impervious coverage in drinking water watershed areas. Now, the only consideration is whether the property proposed to be overbuilt pays taxes to the village. We should care about the environment, water quality, and stormwater control issues around this matter as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Some very good comments. And I forgot to mention that you too are a recovering attorney. Anyone else wish to speak? Pat Corso. We have an attorney here who's not recovered yet.
Just a quick comment on the corridors that she referenced. Yeah, I think you should know those were not, that was not accidental. That was intentional. And in 1999 or 2000, Robert Hyder, Vince Cicchino, both landscape architects, as well as Jim Belyak and myself, put together this corridor overlay. And we took it to each town, and each town approved it, and the county approved it. Now, the result of it is only visible along that 15501 corridor that she mentioned. The dealerships were already there, but if you look at the setbacks for Olive Garden, if you look at Hickory Tavern, you look at all that, that was a result of the overlay. Now, Frank Quiss has that document, and we have a 3-town consortium now that's working together, and I would encourage the group to look at that document that was concurred by the three towns as well as the county that many years ago, and look at re-implementing that as a common standard for the setbacks and the road improvements as we go forward. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate that. Okay, are there any other, yes, Susan Foster. Debbie Layler. I get you two mixed up. Do you look anything alike?
Not exactly.
Okay. Debbie Layler.
Debbie Layler, Azalea Road. I would like to thank the previous speaker for all her comments and agree with everything she said. I would add only a few thoughts that are not on the point I want to talk about, but I would say that the Planning and Zoning Board's ability to issue variances is frightening, actually, given everything you said, and especially given the ongoing effort to finalize our long-range development plan, and also the ongoing study to consider the differences and pros and cons of going from a 1,500 square foot heated living space to 750 square foot heated living space. And some have questioned why that effort to assess that particular question is ongoing when the long-range plan is not yet finalized. However, apparently those efforts are ongoing and the study continues, which speaks to the question of density and future development in the community. I actually want to speak about parking in the downtown area of the village. I want to preface my remarks by saying that I've gone to every document I can find online, resort, village, new core plan. The language is all the same. Beautiful historic village, calm, quiet ambiance, cultural heritage, you name it. The adjectives are the same. We all know what they are. A lot of us moved here because of those attributes. And over the past few years, we have had a remarkable success in the village, as has the resort, in building our village, attracting new residents, developing new special events, practically year-round. We were talking earlier, except for the cold months of January and February, we've got something going on every single month, sometimes more than one thing in this village. And given the demographics, both the population increase and the growth among young families and children, and the change in vehicle size, which is definitely a factor in what's going on downtown. We've gone from sort of moderate-sized cars to large trucks. The parking issue in the downtown area has kind of risen to the top of the pile. I'm not sure many people are aware, but parking and truck traffic in the village are regulated through the municipal code, and a few years back, the village council was taken out of the equation in terms of decision-making. Any decisions about making one side of a road no parking, or putting in a stop sign or a yield sign, now rest with our village manager and the chief of police, which is terrific. Safety obviously should be the key factor. However, when you have an instance like the southeast side of Ritter Road between Carolina Vista and Barrett, or Jinkspan, whichever you want to call it, I'm not sure if anybody is familiar, that side of the road was recently rendered prohibited to parking. However, on the day of the St. Patrick's Day Parade, despite the signs, cars were parked up on that line of the street. So on a very crowded day, the very unsafe conditions that those signs were put up for were thrown into jeopardy again. So I have a possible suggestion, which would be to add a representative from the Beautification Committee or from the Historic Commission to work with the police chief and Jeff anytime some sort of change in parking regulations are going to be made. I understand the Beautification Committee has some graduates of the community college's landscape program. They would be wonderful additions to come in and to re-landscape, to instead of putting up signs, which I'm sure everybody has noticed lately, it's like a forest of trees going up with no parking everywhere throughout the village. Instead of, use that as a temporary measure, but then plant it out, make the street beautiful again. I don't think it's right for the village to maintain that lane as essentially a fire lane or a place for overflow parking. You made it one way because it was unsafe. So anyway, so that's one idea. The other is I would very much like to request that signs be posted and that the appropriate sections of the municipal law be amended to prohibit trucks on Carolina Vista and to prohibit parking on Carolina Vista. The resort has delivery trucks, which I think are coming from the country club and going down Carolina Vista in the morning to get to the hotel, winding their way down Carolina Vista to Ritter, to Barrett, to McLean, instead of going back out to Highway 5. That is not a through truck. That's not making deliveries on Carolina Vista so before we can implement laws, we have to write the laws that you want to implement, and I think that several sections of the municipal code need to be addressed to handle existing problems and perhaps to forestall future ones, including I do believe parking and other tickets for the village should be increased from $5 a ticket to $25. I think a little negative reinforcement is needed. We have allowed parking in the last 5 or 6 years to run amok. We have let the success of our various events get out ahead of us. Our planning has not been what it should have been, and we are now caught in a bad situation where people are getting used to just coming into town and parking wherever they want, whoever front yard, whatever the pine straw. And so I think that the village needs to undertake a re-education campaign to let people know that Pinehurst is going to start enforcing parking laws, and that if you're not going to put up signs, and plant it out. But we, the residents, are feeling the pain of this growth and this success, and we are observing that the village administration and the council is not really paying attention and perhaps not getting out ahead of the problem. A garage is well and good. I saw it referenced in the newspaper, $200,000 to put down on a piece of land. That's a great first step, but 5 or 6 years out, I think there are baby steps we can take in the meantime that would help your local residents and homeowners in the downtown area feel like you were paying attention and that you were going to stop the slide of our sidewalks and our roads downhill, because that's really where we're going now. And for those of you who are not familiar with the problem, I encourage you to take a walk down Magnolia between Chinkopin and Carolina Vista and look at the one historic sidewalk in the village that's got a plaque and see how it looks. Because we're taking our eye off the ball, we're looking at things outside of town, streetlights at Linden that should have the Pinehurst look, or welcome stations or, islands landscaped out by Pine Wild. And we're looking all around, and you're not looking into the village to see what's your bread and butter. You're not taking care of the heart and soul of the village. So that's my 2 bits about parking, and I'm happy to talk to anybody who'd like to.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, any other persons wishing to speak at the public comment period? For the person who just came in, this is the end of our meeting, and we have a public comment period now, and we're going to adjourn this meeting and go into our work session. So, did you wish to speak? Okay, thank you. All right. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn our regular meeting.
Move to adjourn the regular meeting.
Second?
We have a motion by Judy Davis and a second by Jack Farrell to adjourn our regular meeting. Is there any discussion? Okay, let's vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, we are adjourned.